RuggaMatrix is brought to you by Strike. Check out their new fleet tracking system. It will save you hundreds of dollars a month. Go to strike.com.au. Proud sponsors of RuggaMatrix International. Today we go one-on-one with our old friend Ewen McKenzie, Wallabies head coach, and on the eve of taking on the All Blacks in Bledisloe 1, the start of the Rugby Championship. Ewen McKenzie, our special guest. Ewen McKenzie, thanks for your time.
No problem, Jerry. Nice to see you again.
All right, so a couple of days in the job. How's things going? Have you met all the players, and what's the rapport been like already?
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages. One of the things we try to do with this camp is to get exactly that, meet people. It's so easy to get embroiled in the, I guess, all the processes and the technical detail and whatever, but in the human part's quite important. So actually getting in front of people, talking to them, I've got a long way to go there. You know, I haven't had the micro conversations I'd like to have to get to know them beyond rugby, but that'll come in time. But it's been good. I've been really pleased with the way that the players and the staff have approached the first couple of days.
You're a very pragmatic coach, but were you pragmatic about where you would be this time, maybe when you're thinking about your career a couple of months ago before the appointment? Did you, in the back of your mind, doodle down something about the All Blacks?
No, I mean, you always, when you're going on the coaching pathway, you always watch games and you think about things, and you might see something very specific, but you jot it down when you end up losing that piece of paper somewhere. So, no, I've had a look at the French series and got some ideas, and you do build thoughts around, particularly around the individual players over time. So when you look at the composition squad, you start to get an idea where the strengths and weaknesses might be straight away. So you do hold a base knowledge on certain things, but yeah, they'll be working in the camp, they'll be trying things, and they'll have new things, and so it's you really don't know what's happened in the past. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, and that's one of the things that we've got up our sleeve. They don't actually know who we're going to pick or how we're going to do it. So that's a nice element of surprise for us next week.
When you watched the Brumbies play in the final, were you still ticking off players who you thought that may cross the line to get selection down the line, or had you already made your mind up about some of those performers?
Well, we already had the squad chosen at that point, so that made it more about reinforcing some of those decisions. But to be honest, those decisions weren't. They're never done in one game. I think the effort against the Bulls was outstanding by the Brumbies. So from a character point of view, across the board, they showed great resilience, and so there's lots there in terms of the background. So you knew there's something there to work with, and there's a whole bunch of them coming in, and they've all been really interesting players, ones that I don't know so well, but really interesting in their contributions on the training field. Even though they've come back a bit beaten up from the trip, from their finals series, they're all in good shape mentally, and I think that I've been pleasantly surprised with their potential.
How does a guy who, like Sarah Palin, rides a Harley, reasonably conservative with haircuts, get on with blokes from Gen Y, Quade Cooper, etc.?
Oh, I think that's become I've done it different ways, obviously. In the old days of social media and whatever, that was one way, but I just try and understand the life that they lead, but you can't actually beat the face-to-face, and the more I've invested there, and that's what I've done the last sort of 12, 14 months, is just spend more time talking to people, not just as footballers, and once you understand their total life, and if you take a consistent interest in it, they'll trust you, and if you can help them around the edges on anything that's going on, if they trust you in that space, then you've got a chance to move forward. If they respect your opinion, and they'll take on board. And you're not always delivering them good news, but they'll still respect you. And if you can get respect in life and in the workplace, you've got a chance to, and that's a two-way respect I'm talking about. If you can get that situation, it's quite a powerful opportunity.
Bearing in mind this is going to go to air next Wednesday, Quade's obviously been talked about playing at 10. You had him as your star in 2011 and got the brunt of criticism out of the World Cup in 2011. But what is it about Quade? How are you able to get the best out of him? Is it because you've shown faith in him and given him the extra responsibility, which maybe others haven't been able to do?
I think I don't. That's not a conversation I'd have with him. Obviously, we have a consistent dialogue. I guess if you read what he says, the things that we have done is is trust him with the game plan, and he has some input into that, but trust him with delivering the game plan. So I think he's enjoyed that.
Were you worried about that?
I never worried about it, but
honestly,
no, I never worried about it because that's the way we've done it from day one. That's the way we did it at the Reds from day one. So 4 years of developing a game plan and basically entrusting him to call it. By the time you get to the end of the week, he was managing the game plan. And if you actually went to a training session and he watched, and his knowledge and about the detail and the understanding of the positional play and the opportunities around the field, his mental capacity to understand and deliver that and talk it through with the players. In the end, what you need advocates so you can advocate the reasons why we're going to do things. So he trusted us to come up with a game plan that was going to work on the night, and then he took the game plan and then made sure we delivered it. And I'd say 95% of the time that's exactly what happened.
So why has Curtly Beale fallen away in that regard in the last few years in the Wallabies? Because in 2008 you named as fly half for the Waratahs and you went all the way and just fell over at the final when he got injured. Do you think Australian Rugby's wasted their opportunity with Curtly Beale in the meantime?
Well, I think Curtly. I've got a high opinion of Curtly as a player. I've used him in the same role as I used Quade. Well, I used Quade a bit differently. Every player you deal with differently, and there's a different set of circumstances. But clearly, he's quite capable of making things happen. So, I think that what I can't do is tell you how they were used. I mean, that's how I use the players, and that clearly works for some. Doesn't mean that everything you do inspires players. So you've got to try and treat them all a bit differently. So that's one of the things you learn over time as you spend more time with the players, if you invest in them, you get to know what makes them tick. And if you can, once you know what makes them tick, well, if you can play to that, in the sense of you can get them doing the things that they're good at and doing the things where they can contribute. They all want to help, but they all can help in different ways. So you've got to find a way to let them do that. If they're just sitting back waiting to receive information and not contributing to the team, then it's pretty much a one-way transaction. So you've got to try and get some sort of two-way transaction, but that doesn't mean you're giving them carte blanche to run the show. It's actually about investing in a team outcome.
You have to be careful what you say now about selection. I mean, obviously you would have pushed Quade's Barrow when you were a Queensland coach, but is he the number 110 in Australia?
Well, I think that's, people are going to draw, people are going to draw make a lot of assumptions about what I do. They'll assume that we're going to play like the Reds, and they'll assume they're going to pick certain players. But if people look a little bit deeper, they'll realise I haven't coached any team the same way. So, and so you start the process again. When I was at the Reds, I had a bunch of resources and I coached appropriately, and in that process you pick the teams accordingly. I've got a different set of resources now and a different set of circumstances, so anyone that knows me well enough will know that I'll go back to the drawing board and have a look. So there's no sure things other than people will get an opportunity to perform, and but I will definitely have a very competitive training and squad environment, and it's the best man wins.
Robbie Deans is very critical of Quade's defensive capabilities, and he talked about the different intensity at test match level. It was a pretty big slap around in a public environment. Do you think Quade's defence, obviously you think he's a good player, but to have your defence questioned in that way maybe rubs a lot of people the wrong way? I mean, what did you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know the background and what the objectives were. There was a lot of commentary going on and around that pre the Lions and about where Quade and where he's at. All I know is that Quade's, from a tackle effectiveness point of view, he's improved every year, and it's come a significant distance in the last 4 years. People worry about where he stands in defence, but again, in the Reds environment, the circumstances we had, we used him. He was our best counter-attacking player, so we used him accordingly. So, people make a lot of assumptions about why things happen, but I don't worry about Quade's defence at all. I know, and we've seen he's made some of the best hits this year. He's made try-saving tackles in a lot of big games for us. Like he knows what's going on. So I don't worry about that at all. It's just there's a lot about Quade that people just keep speculating and keep reading. In the end, Quade's newsworthy, so will become newsworthy. So people talk about him a lot, but a lot of the dialogue is actually outdated and tired, actually. So I know Quade's moved on. He's just concentrating on playing. I've moved on, and so we'll just deal with what we got going forward, not spend a lot of time worrying about what happened in the World Cup or what happened around the Lions series.
He was pretty impressive the other day, talking about how he managed to train by himself to remain focused. Did you interact much with him over that period?
Well, I've interacted with him a lot over the last 12 months, and it's been ups and downs, but I've tried to be pretty consistent in his life. He's had things going on, he's boxing, there's a lot of things going on, but we managed that in the background. To a credit to him, he managed that, and he's actually got a very strong, that the boxing is actually giving him a lot of discipline in around the edges, and kept him very busy. He's very conscious about being good at that area. Most of these elite sportsmen, whatever they decide to do, they want to be the best at it. So he's taken that on with relish, and that's provided him another thing to do in his life.
Did you ever consider stopping him from doing that?
Well, it was a concern for me initially, because I wasn't involved in the decision around the fact that he was going to box, but it ended up being part of his contract, and I was worried about the impact there. But to be fair to him, he managed it very well, and it was always in the background, and didn't affect anything he was doing football-wise. I mean, it affected a trial game for the Reds. Apart from that, it had no impact on anything else. And in fact, he's kept his boxing training going and in the background, and has no impact on the day-to-day football training.
You're pretty quick to move James O'Connor's official position out wide, and myself and a lot of other people have said it for years that he should have been playing out further. Why do you think Robbie was so stubborn over 10 with James O'Connor?
Well, you're probably better asking him. I'm not quite sure. I mean, he's clearly a very good player, and the good players, you want them to touch the ball often. So shifting him in closer, there's logic in that. You want good players, but I've always considered him a very good ball carrier, and probably a really good short passing. He's very good at putting guys through holes. So I think that at the moment he's played a lot of Test football. I mean, he's played 40 Tests at a young age. I mean, here's a guy that could go and play 150 Tests without even trying. He's just got to be in the team. He's a very good footballer, and what the problem is other things have got in the way, and we need to get him back on and focused. And everything he's done this week's been very much around football and just doing the right thing at the right time. So I'm quite pleased with that progress. But in terms of his positional play, that'll be something that it's talked about. I think that he's showed world-class abilities in playing wing and fullback. He's done that already. We know he can do that. So ultimately down the track, he might make a very good 12, I think. And they're all things that we'll discuss. But I think that they're things that he can explore. We talked to him about that, and playing club football, he can try. He played 12 in club football the other day. I've got no problem with him experimenting in that. I just don't. I think in Test matches, we want to get the best outcome. And we know he's very good in certain things, so we'll use him in those capacities, and he can develop his game in other positions in other environments.
So the question really is, was that an environment to experiment with James so much? I mean, would you have done it, for example, experiment in the Lion series at such a crucial position?
Well,
I think Australia wants.
I'm not involved in the logic and the decision making that went into that. I mean, obviously the Lions preparation, there was a long time. There was camps and a lot of things that led up to that. So I guess it was a fairly measured decision and quite a deliberate decision, because it was carried through across 3 Tests. So there's always a little bit of fudge and experiment. Inevitably you've got to try things, because the nature of teams, the nature of preparation, the nature of travel means that often you need a player that can do something else than just play one position. So I think fundamentally in my head, there's always players always in the ideal world can play a couple of positions. They play one really well, and obviously they can pinch hit in another, and that gets you through bench scenarios, World Cups, things where you've got a finite number of players, that's what Super Rugby's about. You've got a finite number of players, so you've got to adapt. So I think the difference in Test level is it is a representative team. You've got 170 odd or 160 odd players there you can choose from, so you can you can do things differently. You can go and cherry pick. You can change things week to week. Then it gets down to a question of who's ready. So it's important in all of these preparations to make sure you've got three or four players positioned so that they can come in at short notice. The point of all that is that you can, with a representative team, you're less reliant on having to experiment, because the 5 provinces are already delivering players in different positions, so you can actually go and say, well, there's a winger, there's a prop, and you can almost take them straight up. But that doesn't mean you necessarily agree with all those 5 coaches and what they're doing. But my intention is to have pretty close dialogue. I've had a lot of dialogue already with the provincial coaches on a lot of things, so I'll continue that dialogue. It's a continuous process of dialogue. From that, you'll understand what they're trying to do with their players, why their players, why does someone start ahead of someone else? When you understand all that, that's what you need. In the end, the provincial coaches spend a lot of time with those players, and they know a lot more about what's going on with them and in terms of their personalities and what they contribute and their attitude they bring, other than the 80 minutes that you see on TV or when you watch the game live. You see them play, but what are they like as people? So there's a lot to be gained from that process. But in terms of experimenting, you'll understand more about the potential of players and what other positions they can play. So, that's there's a big due diligence that goes in behind all of that. So ultimately, when you pick a team, hopefully you're not actually in a position where you've got to experiment to the point where you're trying things that haven't been tried before.
I think what we want to know is, after decades of being in the wilderness at our fly half, which has been a rich history, our last great one was Stephen Larkham, we really haven't had a 10. We haven't developed a 10 consistently there. Is Quaid the man, or was?
I think.
Does this test match tell us who's going to be the anointed one?
I think this camp's told me that they've got three really good options. I'm really quite pleased with what we've found, and that probably confirms. I was watching the teams through the Super Comp, and I thought there was three really good prospects, and that's proved to be the case. And they've got things. They've got more of the springs to their bow than we've even seen. So I'm quite excited about that. And obviously, we already talked about Kirtley being out. So there's another guy I know can stand in there as well. So there's four without trying. So what you have to do is then try and think about how you want to play the game and try and model those guys into being able to deliver what we call a base game. You've got to have a base. In the end, we'll be trying to get a base playing style that Australian rugby players understand. They can come in and deliver the core game. And then it just gets down to tactics on the night, and that'll be the interesting part where we develop tactics around the teams we've got to play.
Is there any legacy from, and when you take over a team, there's obviously a handover, but is there any legacy from Robbie that you've taken, that you've had to take?
Yeah, there's quite a bit, I think on the playing side of things, nothing's ever completely broken. You tweak things, there's a bunch of core things that we will retain, there's no doubt about that. There are other things that, have been in place for 5 or 6 years, and I think there's an opportunity to change some of those things to freshen it up, but also it forces the players to have to think. When things are just the same all the time, they just don't think. So it's just human nature. So you've got to actually change things to force people to go back and reconsider and think and actually digest and learn, get back into that learning mode. So obviously we're going to change things that we think will make the biggest difference for us, but we're not changing everything. We're not going to change just for change's sake. So that's been the process over the last 5 weeks to understand where we'll get our biggest bang for our buck.
We've always been known as a smart team, but in recent years we played some pretty dumb rugby. Do you feel like you want to empower the players to be a bit more involved in the intelligence side of it, developing the players and thinking better on their feet in that environment? Because I think the frustrating thing is maybe you can get towed up by the All Blacks physically, but to be beaten by them in an intellectual way in rugby, which we've always prided ourselves on, wouldn't be acceptable, would it?
Well, there's two parts of that. There's the thinking that goes into the game, so where the opportunities are, and the coaches definitely have strong ideas about what that is, and that's an applied intelligence over a period of time. We get more time to analyse that. I think the players have got something to contribute there, and there's certainly players who are students of the game have got a strong contribution to make, so they need to be heard for sure. Because and the sum of all that ends up you end up in the game plan, and that needs to be owned ultimately by the players. So you've got to be able to sell that to them as this is it. So the selling of that, the coach gets to do that, and you sell that as a group. You sell it one-on-one to players so that they understand. Ultimately, if you get an outcome, you get a result, and you win, then the players, the trust will come with that the coaches know what they're doing, and the players' contribution's been heard. So all of that process ends up with a positive outcome. So that's ultimately how you like to run it. But it doesn't need to be formalised. It just needs to be a process of development, and it's a 7-day process that you got week in, week out, where you're trying to get that done.
Robbie was reluctant to get involved in a slinging match with opposition coaches, and it's sort of been given the opponents like Steve Hansen a really free run. If he's throwing stuff at you, you're going to stand up for the boys. Stand up for us, Ewen.
I think people that know me, I think if people know me over time, they don't mind. I'll defend the things that need to be defended. So
it looks like you're looking forward to that.
I'm not. I'm not here to be the punching bag for anyone. So I'm quite proud of the Wallabies and proud of the players, and I'm proud about the prospects that we've got going forward. I want our fans to be proud of their team. So the battles that go on, there'll be an 80-minute battle, but if there are other battles to be fought, well, we need to fight them. So we need to. In the end, it is a game, but we've got to defend our interests and we've got to get our point across. So I look forward to Test week, and we'll see what it brings.
Does it make it easier because you are an Australian defending Australian team?
Oh, I think that the whole debate about that. I mean, I think sports. You've seen a lot. I've been a foreign coach somewhere else too. I understand how it works, and I understand the pressures that go with that. It's difficult when you move, and it's the same for players. Players move into different cultures and whatever, but that seems to be more and more a part of sport. But I think what I can offer is that there are not many ex-players or ex-Wallabies that have got to coach the team. So I'm really proud about that achievement. It's been 30-something years or 39 years or something since Brock, I think, was the last one. So I'm really proud about that. But what I can do is I can stand in front of the playing group and say, I know, I've worn the jersey, I've stood out there, I've stood in front of the haka, I've held the Bledisloe up, I know what it looks like, I know what it likes to drink out, I know all of that. And I've done it as a player and as assistant coach, so I know I've been there, so I can actually tell them what it's like. I know what the sacrifice is going to be needed, so I can do all of that with credibility. So I look forward to that and making sure the players understand the enormity of the task, but the enormity of the upside, the great opportunity that comes with it.
It sounds like you want to be that you're liked as well as respected. I mean, is there a danger there that you you want to be too much liked rather than getting that job done?
No, I don't think that. Easy to be liked, hard to be respected. I've always said that. That. So there's not many things I do that. Around being liked. I mean, there's plenty of hard decisions in there, and I learnt that very early in the piece as a head coach. The challenge is to make all the hard decisions when they come along. You can make lots of decisions that are obvious and easy, and to get people to like you, but the detail will come in the hard decisions, and people will work out pretty soon when we start narrowing the squad down that there'll be hard decisions in there for sure.
And just to wrap things up, are you going to go out there with a win-at-all-cost defensive plan against these guys? Because you've appointed a defensive coach out of the structure that was there, but are you actually going to look like attacking these guys as well? Are you able to attack the All Blacks, who everyone believes are just unstoppable?
Well, of course you can. Yeah, the rugby affords you many opportunities. I don't think we're not going to sit there and we'll understand what they do, but we'll know what we want to do. So. Yeah, it's about generating pressure these games, and we've got to find ways to put pressure on them. It's not about us there standing there and trying to defend our line for 80 minutes and hope they don't score too many points. We're not going out there to come second, I can guarantee you that. So we'll go out there, and we've got things that we think are strengths of ours, and we want to be able to showcase that. Ultimately, in any game, you're going to get 50% of the ball in attack, and the rest of the time you're going to defend. So you've got to be able to do both those things really well, and we understand that. That's just part of playing rugby at this level, but we're not going out there to come second.
Steve Hansen, a couple of lines on him. He's a wily coach who's obviously taken over from Great Many.
I know Steve from way back. I mean, he's been assistant coach at that level, and I've done the same thing. So we probably had the assistant coach rapport. Now we're both in different territories. So we get all the pressures to go with that. So he's got a hard job. He can't afford to lose a game. So. There's a lot of pressure over there on the New Zealand, on the All Blacks coach, so he can't afford to lose a game. So no better way than putting pressure on him is to beat the All Blacks.
Well, obviously it's going to be exciting, and do you hope this will be a great rivalry between the two of you? Because I think the interest is not. You've got to have that interest off the field, don't you, as well, to maintain that burning issue during the week.
Well, I think there's always been a healthy rivalry between Australians and Kiwis. I think that's everywhere. Wherever you look, there's that rivalry exists, but. Yeah, I think that this rivalry is symbolised by a bloody big trophy that looks pretty impressive when you hold it up in the air. So it's hard to get, so if you can get it, it's hard to get back too. So when you get your hands on it, so And I think that the Leslie Cup's a really good symbol of that rivalry. Yeah, sure, we compete against the Kiwis on all different ways and means, but I think that's a very symbolic and one that's probably the most symbolic, I think, between the two countries. Yeah, there are other sports in that compete, but I think it's the most symbolic one and therefore has the most relevance. So it's the most important one to get right.
And I mean, I know you took over after him, but Robbie Deans. I mean, how was your relationship with him? And obviously, you'd be wishing him the best now.
Yeah, no, we sort of text on the day. He sent me a congratulatory text. I responded. Yeah, it's difficult. I understand. We've all been through the different coaching ups and downs, so it's not always a pleasant day at the office. It happens, but yeah, he's got an outstanding coaching record, and he's had a long stint at the Wallabies, and he kept them at the pointy end of the IRB rankings, which is really important. There's a lot of outstanding wins in there, so he'll obviously dust himself off and move on. Because when you get into this coaching business and you're in it for a while, you get stuck in it, and I'm sure he'll move on to something from a coaching point of view that'll be really interesting. So that'll happen. I've got no doubt. But I haven't had any dialogue on that front. But in terms of rapport, we work together without any drama the whole time. If there's ever a request, we accommodated. So, that relationship went on, and that always happens. And that's what my job as a provincial coach was, to support the Wallabies, and that's what I did.
Ewen McKenzie, thanks for your time, mate. Good luck. We can't wait for you to bring back the Bledisloe.
Well, hopefully we'll have a conversation in the future where we've done exactly that. But I'm really looking forward to the opportunity and the challenge of doing it. Thank you.